Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed for another GPU pricing update video. A few bits of news in this one to get through, a few odd GPU launches from AMD and some unfortunate price hikes for GPUs to discuss. It's not all bad, there has been some positive price adjustments for some products, but before talking about all of that, today's video is sponsored by Ugreen's world first Nexode 300 watt multi-port GAN charger with a dedicated 140 watt output port. This beast of a charger is so powerful it can charge 5 devices at once using high-speed protocols like PD 3.1 and QC 3.0 with a wide variety of voltages for maximum compatibility. But the Nexode 300 watt charger doesn't just provide fast charging speeds, it's also designed with safety in mind. The built-in thermal guard solution keeps connected devices protected from overheating, overcharge, and excessive current, all in a convenient, impressively small form factor. Not only that, but the use of GAN power ICs instead of legacy silicon improves efficiency to reduce carbon emissions from device charging. To learn more and grab this super powerful 300 watt fast charger now, click the links in the description below. Let's kick off this month's update with a discussion on AMD's new Radeon RX 6750 GRE. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts and Steve's thoughts on this product, check out the latest Hardware Unboxed podcast episode. But basically, AMD have released two new, and I use the word new quite loosely here, new graphics cards under the same Radeon RX 6750 GRE name, with GRE meaning Golden Rabbit Edition. The lower spec card is the 6750 GRE 10GB, which is effectively just a Radeon RX 6700. It packs 36 compute units with a game clock of 2189 MHz, along with 10GB of GDDR6 on a 160-bit bus at 16 gigabits per second, 170 watt board power rating, and a US MSRP of $270. Same configuration as the RX 6700 across the board, with just a new name and price that more closely fits in with the rest of the GPU market 2 years later. Then there's the 6750 GRE 12GB, which isn't just a 12GB version of the 10GB model. It also features 40 compute units with a 2439 MHz game clock, meaning core GPU performance is higher. There's more memory bandwidth too, as the memory interface is increased to 192-bit with the same 16 gigabits per second GDDR6 memory. Board power here is 230 watts, and we are seeing an MSRP of $290 US. This naming is pretty misleading and confusing for customers on a number of fronts. Firstly, the use of 6750 branding implies that this card is on the level of the RX 6750 XT, as opposed to the two 6700 level models. However, that is not the case. The 10GB 6750 GRE has fewer compute units than the 6750 XT, so it is absolutely not the same card, while the 12GB variant is also not a 6750 XT because it lacks the faster 18 gigabits per second memory of that GPU. As these products are much closer to the 6700 series than the 6750 XT, at best they should be called the RX 6700 GRE instead. We're also seeing the bad naming practice of labeling two distinctly different GPUs the same thing and throwing 10GB and 12GB on the end, as if that's sufficient to describe the true differences between these models. The RX 6700 and RX 6700 XT are different products, that makes sense. Now these have been effectively renamed into the RX 6750 GRE 10GB and RX 6750 GRE 12GB, which only serves to confuse the buyers more than the previously much simpler naming scheme. The VRAM capacity is not the only difference between these products, so they should have a much clearer name. Like with the RX 7900 GRE that we reviewed on the channel a few months ago, the RX 6750 GRE series is primarily a launch for the Chinese DIY market, as well as OEM and system integrators elsewhere. So while there is a US MSRP listed, it's unlikely you'll be able to just purchase one of these cards off the shelf outside of China. You'll probably have to buy an entire pre-built system with one inside, so they aren't really going to be available for $270 and $290 US. Which is a shame really, as the price tag for these products is quite attractive. Right now, the RX 6700 XT is available for as low as $320 US, so the 6750 GRE 12GB would offer the same thing for $30 less. Similarly, you can pick up an RX 6700 for $280, so the new GRE variant would be a $10 discount. It's also puzzling that AMD would launch a second GPU at $270 within the same year, the first being the RX 7600. I know this is pretty much just a refresh of an older last generation model, but coming out with two $270 products is pretty bizarre, especially as the RX 6750 GRE 10GB is clearly better. It has more VRAM than the RX 7600 at 10GB versus 8GB, more memory bandwidth, and better overall performance if the RX 6700 is anything to go by. Why are AMD launching refreshed RDNA 2 GPUs in 2023? Well, it's likely because they still have a lot of RDNA 2 silicon to sell. There doesn't appear to be any signs of Navi 22 based GPUs running out of stock, so a refreshed series at an even lower price is possibly one way to drum up interest and increase sales. In my opinion, AMD would probably have been better off launching the 6750 GRE 10GB instead of the RX 7600 at $270 as a new product to a wide audience, maybe as a 7600 XT, and then releasing the RX 7600 at a lower price. But that would mess up their lineup. It would introduce a situation of having RDNA 2 and RDNA 3 in the same series at the same time, so yeah, not exactly ideal. Other major news this month concerns the GeForce RTX 4090. The US Department of Commerce recently put export restrictions on several of Nvidia's graphics cards that can be used for AI workloads, at least those with significant amounts of horsepower to do so. Alongside the RTX 4090, GPUs like the A100, A800, and H100 were put on the restricted list, with the restrictions applying to China and several other countries. This means that these GPUs can no longer be sold to these countries without jumping through significant hurdles. Most of the affected models are server, data center, and workstation cards that we don't really care about, but the inclusion of the GeForce RTX 4090 is bad news for gamers. The restriction in selling 4090s to China and other regions has led to flow-on effects around the world. Immediately, the price of RTX 4090s in China went up significantly, encouraging suppliers and distributors with access to 4090s to export these to China for a big price bump, provided they can legally export them there or find some alternate method to do so. This is a similar situation to when cryptocurrency miners were buying up all the GPUs at inflated prices. If there's a significant buy in the market after a product at a much higher than normal price, all the suppliers and distributors will want to service those buyers rather than the general market interested in the cards at a normal price. With suppliers set to make bank selling RTX 4090s to China and other restricted regions, this affects the pricing for cards in non-restricted countries like the US and here in Australia. We've been told that prices for RTX 4090s are expected to increase significantly in the next few months, and we're already seeing the effects of that at Newegg. In the 6 months prior to October, it was pretty easy to purchase an RTX 4090 at its $1,600 MSRP. Now the cheapest models, just days after the restrictions were announced, sit at $1,700 US, with the majority of cards going for more like $1,740 or even $1,800. And based on what we've heard, that's a good price right now. It's only going to go up from here until the situation stabilizes a bit. So this situation is going to screw over gamers interested in buying the flagship GeForce GPU for gaming, no matter whether you are in China or the US or Australia or anywhere. I don't know what sort of price point the RTX 4090 will hit in the coming months, but it won't be $1,600 US. Luckily, other GeForce GPUs and the entire Radeon lineup are not on the restricted list, so they won't be directly affected in terms of price, but it could lead to increased demand for the tier down models like the RTX 4080 and RX 7900 XTX, which could have smaller pricing implications. Something to look out for as RTX 4090 prices continue to rise. Looking across the rest of the graphics card market, there hasn't been many updates to the GeForce lineup outside of the RTX 4090 increasing in price. The RTX 4070, both RTX 4060 Ti's and the RTX 4060 all continue to be available below their MSRPs, making them more attractive than at launch, in particular the RTX 4070 at $550 US. This month, we are starting to see a bit of price movement for the RTX 4070 Ti as well, coming down to $770 for the cheapest models. Since launch, this card has been consistently priced at or above $800, making this the first time we are seeing the 4070 Ti below MSRP. In my opinion, it's still too expensive at this price point, so hopefully we see further discounts during Black Friday. AMD's Radeon RX 7000 series has been pretty consistent across the last few months. There has been a small amount of movement for the RX 7700 XT, dropping by $10 for the cheapest models just a month after release. We still expect this card to hit $400 US in the coming months, as it just doesn't make any sense at $450. The RX 7600 is also now approaching a more sensible price, falling to $250 when we check this month. Intel's Arc series is getting more attractive with each passing month. The A770 and A750 both fell in price in October, with the entire lineup now sitting below $300 US. The A770 16GB has dropped in price by 9%, which is quite decent for the cheapest 16GB card you can get. Meanwhile, the Arc A580 has debuted at $180 but already fallen to $170 within just a few weeks, so Intel are very much keeping up with market trends and making adjustments where necessary. If you want an older generation model, several of them are still available brand new at Newegg, which just goes to show the level to which these models were overstocked during the cryptocurrency boom. Supply for the RTX 3070 and 3070 Ti appears to be pretty close to running out, so I wouldn't expect to see these for much longer, and even then, relative to the RTX 4060 Ti series at basically the same price, I'm not sure why you'd bother. Prices for lower tier RTX 30 series models fell slightly, but nothing here is especially impressive. Not much price movement for AMD either, with their RDNA 2 GPUs, which still appear to be in plentiful supply for the most part. The product of most interest here is the Radeon RX 6800, which has dropped to just $400 US, an outstanding deal if you're after a product around that price. It's slightly faster than the RX 7700 XT at a $40 lower price point, while also packing 16GB of memory versus 12GB. It was already a reasonable deal at $430, so that's one to be looking out for. AMD also continues to offer very good value in the lower parts of the market with GPUs like the RX 6700 XT, RX 6600 XT, and RX 6600, although pricing here isn't much different to previous months. The used market isn't especially exciting right now, with little price movement matching what we've seen on the retail front. If you want a used RTX 30 series card, they are typically available at a 30% discount or thereabouts relative to new models. If you want an AMD GPU, expect a smaller discount, more in the 20% range, as the used Radeon market hasn't been as quick to respond to AMD's aggressive discounts. For example, with the sizable drop to RX 6800 pricing this month, the used market hasn't adjusted, so you'll only get about a 13% discount buying used versus new for that model. With that said, the RX 6600 right now is a great buy if you want a GPU upgrade but have less than $150 to spend, as you can pick them up for $136 used on average. The RTX 20 series has perhaps seen the most movement, dropping in price by 8% on average this month after a much smaller gain last month. There has been a slow increase to the volume of 20 series sales as owners look to upgrade after 4 to 5 years. But for the GTX 16 series, we aren't seeing much of note here, and similar with the Radeon RX 5000 series, both of these ranges have some solid choices if you want to spend less than $130 US. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on the graphics card market across the next month as we head into the usual holiday shopping season. As Black Friday sales and so on are just around the corner, I wouldn't bother buying a graphics card right now unless you see something at an especially good price or discount. Given sales for most GPUs have been pretty lackluster this year, I expect we'll see some reasonable flash sales pushing GPU prices more into an acceptable price range, as we saw a few months back during a couple of brief sales. The only cause for concern right now is pricing for the GeForce RTX 4090. If you specifically want one of those models, it's probably better to hit the buy button sooner rather than later. Pretty much everything else continues to be at or near the cheapest price we've seen, and there's still plenty of room for further price reductions as evidenced by the recent price drops for cards like the RTX 4070 and RTX 4060 Ti. So that's it for this month's GPU pricing update. Thanks to everyone that continues to appreciate these videos. If you do want to support our channel directly, then we do have our Patreon and Float Plan accounts. Links are in the description below. You'll get access to some cool perks and benefits like our upcoming monthly live stream, which will probably be happening next month. So yeah, it's a good time to sign up if you want access to that. We also have our Discord community, BTS videos, and other good stuff. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.